Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
It's coming in.
I think Edward is in Taiwan, but he's actually in Seattle right now, so it's
Mm-hmm.
4:30 a.m. for him.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to start the session today. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Max Liu. I'm a co-founder of the Dialogues on Asian Universities. Before we begin the 10th dialogue of DAU, I'd like to take you on a brief journey through the past 4 years since we started this initiative. So DAU started as an email exchange between three higher education pioneers, Tony, Hsuan, and Yingchai, as you can see on the slides. They asked themselves a simple question. How should Asian universities find their unique path of development in the 21st century? And their email quickly turned into an exciting idea for an online dialogue. Hsuan, my longtime mentor, asked if I could help with the dialogue. I knew it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so I eagerly joined to support. That initial dialogue was a huge success. We had over 200 participants from all over the world. And from there, DAU was born. So today, DAU is a leading independent platform where higher education leaders come together to discuss the challenges and opportunities facing Asian higher education in the 21st century. And over the past 4 years, DAU has curated 9 dialogues across a wide range of topics critical to the development of Asian higher education. And our dialogue has brought together 20 plus leaders from many different countries, as you can see on the slide. And together, they represent 20 plus institutions globally that are leading the changes in higher education, not just in Asia. And I want to say that none of this is possible without a dedicated volunteering team who put in so much work in making sure that DAU runs smoothly with a high production quality. So on behalf of Hsuan, Tony, and Yingchai, I want to express my deepest gratitude for the team. And with that, I want to introduce our topic of today, the reason why all of you are here. For the 10th DAU, we're going to deep dive into the historical shift in the demographic changes in Asia. Many countries and regions are experiencing an aging population, while younger generations are reluctant to have kids. We note that this trend is not universal. There are countries like India and Kazakhstan that are still young with still high birth rate, but most economists predict that as their economy develop, their demographic trend will eventually resemble those of Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and China. So how should the universities face those challenges, and can they turn these challenges into opportunities for better development? And I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists today. They're not only subject matter experts on demographic changes and economies, but they also have hands-on experience leading universities through this kind of challenges, thinking about this in their day-to-day leadership practices. And our first panelist to speak will be Professor Edward Chow, a distinguished finance expert and academic leader from Taiwan. He's a professor emeritus at the National Chengchi University, the leading social science university in Taiwan, where he previously served as the president from 2014 to 2018. Professor Chow earned his Ph.D. in business from Indiana University. His research focuses on investment, corporate finance, and the economic implications of geopolitical risks. He has written extensively on the challenges brought forth by low birth rate to universities across Taiwan. Thank you for joining us, Professor Chow.
Thank you.
Our second panelist is Atsushi SEIKE, an old friend of DAU. He was a panelist for the third DAU on private universities in Asia. Professor Seike is a leading labor economist and public academic leader in Japan. He's currently the president of the Japanese Red Cross Society, and from 2009 to 2017, he served as the president of Keio University, the top private university in Japan. Following his tenure at Keio, he also led the Promotion and Mutual Aid Corporation for Private Schools in Japan, the agency that helps all private schools in Japan to think about their sustainability issue and financing issues, including the challenges brought forth by demographic changes. He earned a Ph.D. in labor economics from Keio University. Thank you for joining us again, Professor Seike.
Thank you.
Co-moderating with me is Professor Dashun Feng, DAU co-founder and currently the chair of International Advisory Board at Hainan University. Professor Feng has served on over 20 university advisory boards or leadership positions and has written extensively on higher education. And as I said earlier, he's a dear mentor of mine, so it is my greatest pleasure to co-moderate with him. And before I virtually hand the mic to our panelists, Dashun, would you like to say a few words?
Now, I think we should begin now. Let the Gen 2 start to speak.
Okay. Well, let's welcome Ed to share a few words, and then Professor Seike will share a few words before we engage in a moderated discussion.
All right. I'd like to thank Max and Dashun for the opportunity to speak at the event today. I think the topic we talk about today is very important in Taiwan, mainly because we have had long years of low birth rate, and the low birth rate has very much adverse impact on the universities in Taiwan. So as a side effect of low birth rate, I think Taiwanese universities are becoming more and more financially constrained, which is going to affect the development of universities in Taiwan in the future. So I'm going to talk about this issue right now. Okay. As you probably know, Taiwan has one of the lowest birth rate in the world, okay? And I think it's going to get worse in the future. The current birth rate, it's about 0.8%, okay? And it has been declining over the years. It's not going to stop until maybe 2040, all right, or 2035, according to the UN projections. But I doubt it. I think it's probably will continue to drop, okay, and stabilize for a period of time. And as a result of low birth rate, the number of high school students reaches reaches a high point around 1 million in 1994 and fell to about 550,000 in 2023. So about, half of the high school students, are gone, right? And so the number of universities, including technology universities, that was 164 in 1997, the highest number ever. But by 2023, okay, which is last year, there was only 145 left. And currently, there are more undergraduate student spots than number of high school graduates. That means that every high school graduate can go to a university if he or she chooses to, okay? That means that these universities in Taiwan compete very, very severely for high school students. And not only so, fewer and fewer students are interested in the PhD program in Taiwan, mainly because the salaries for fresh PhDs in university is really, really low. Right now, it's about 30,000 US dollars per year, okay? So the low wage is a discouragement for students to pursue PhD degrees in Taiwan, okay? Now I would like to talk about the financial challenges that actually partly arose from the low birth rate, okay? The higher education budget in 2023 was 128 billion, which increased from 79.5 billion in 2000. Okay, but the budget actually has been just roughly keeping up with the inflation rate. The average inflation rate in Taiwan in the past 20 years was about 2%. Okay. So, however, the increase in funding has been going to competitive funding, like the top universities project and so-called cultivating higher education project. And because this kind of funding does not go to regular university fundings, this type of funding is by nature unstable, okay, due to its competitive nature. You might get it for a few years, but then you may not have it, in the next few years and so forth. And the regular funding allocated to public universities has been stable in nominal terms in the past 15 years, which means that in real terms, the funding has been declining, okay, for almost 2 decades. And the tuition has been frozen for 20 years. That means universities are pretty much have been pretty much disallowed to raise tuitions. Okay, so and all universities actually are very much financially constrained right now because the tuition has pretty much been frozen for 20 years, right? And as I said earlier, regular funding from the university has been frozen for 20 years too, okay? And then fewer students means fewer paying customers, okay? And so all the universities really feel these financial challenges right now. And as I said also earlier, the government provides some competitive grants for universities to apply, but the grants are unstable and limited to some universities only. And in the first 5 years, the competitive funding went primarily to so-called top universities in Taiwan. But then the Cultivating Higher Education project expanded the applicants pool to almost all universities in Taiwan, which means that top universities in the first 5 years got more, and then in the second 5 years, they were forced to get less, okay? And I think what made it difficult for Taiwanese university to develop over time, in addition to low birth rate and then the funding from the MOE, there are other factors. For example, the mission of a university is heavily influenced by the government, and to a large extent is fluid depending on the views of MOE at the time. Okay, so MOE uses its budget to affect university in terms of what type of program universities should emphasize and what kind of direction an MOE would like to see universities to go. Okay. And also the governance of Taiwanese universities is dysfunctional, which make it difficult for it to handle its financial problem. Okay, it's mainly because the Senate members of the university, which is the decision body of the university, they are actually elected, okay, from the faculty body. And which means that some representative at the Senate are not represented based on their research and their teaching contribution to a university, but because they were elected mainly because they lobby for the votes. Okay, that of course is bad for the university. And also the university culture does not foster excellence, okay, for lack of collegiality and accountability. Now in Taiwan, professors actually do not have to be, in the university unless they have to teach. Okay, and so some professors would just come, for classrooms, and then they would just leave afterwards. So that create a very, very, very big problem. Okay, and then although professors are required to do research and to teach well, but a professor whose research is not good in the past, like maybe 10 years ago, okay, could be asked to leave. Now it's difficult for university to ask a university ask a professor whose research is not good to leave anymore because of the intervention of the local court. And also, it's very difficult to ask a faculty members to leave for not being able to teach well. Okay, so so that's also a problem. So lack of collegiality and accountability make it difficult for Taiwanese university to excel, I think. Okay, And because universities are financially constrained, and in order to develop, university need money, right? So all universities now go all out, to get financial resources. Okay, and so they provide all sorts of programs, to get funding, like executive training programs, programs, offered to practitioners who did not have a chance to come to university before, and so forth. Okay, and because there are just so many programs that are aimed at getting financial resources, academic standards and qualities are, inevitably compromised as a result, because faculty members simply don't have enough time to do their research and to teach their regular courses well, right? And the problem has been around for years, okay? But domestic politics prevents positive changes. For example, we wanted tuition to increase, right? At least, commensurate with inflation rate. But then it has never been possible because students would vehemently rejected this kind of proposal, and then they would work with politicians to keep tuition increase from happening. Okay, and then to change the university governance is almost impossible. Okay, and the government now is saying that in addition to having 10% of the Senate representation by students, now the government is thinking about increasing it to 20%. Now you can think, you probably can imagine how difficult it would be for 20% of students sitting, at the table of Senate and to decide university, pretty much all university affairs. Okay, but I think I also need to talk about the implication of Taiwan situation, for other universities globally. I think, as far as my observation goes, globally, universities are getting more financially strained too. Okay, I've seen universities in Japan, Korea, and in Europe, and so forth. And this seems to be, and not only so, I think the universities in the world seem to be more seem to see more interference, from the state. Like in Taiwan, right? The government interfere with university affairs a lot, although the government claims that universities are independent, right, and should be allowed to be run independently. But and United States, recently, because of the Israel and the Hamas war, university presidents were actually asked to sit in the hearings held by the senators, in the Senate. It seems to me that it's an indication of interference of state in the university affairs too. Okay. And so, according to what I just said, I think academic standards and qualities would be more concerning in the future, mainly because of the low birth rate. Universities are competing for high school students, and also because governments, globally now have so many funding priorities. They don't seem to prioritize their funding in university development. Okay, and so this will affect universities in the future. But however, the silver lining should be and always should be with the faculty members themselves. In Taiwan, there are many professors who, notwithstanding the challenging environment, strive to be good teachers and researchers. Okay, they just do whatever they think is good. Okay, notwithstanding the low pay they get, and so forth, right? And I think because professors, they choose this profession simply because they by their nature they want to excel, right? In something. I think university leaders should take advantage of this and create opportunities for the good faculty members to induce changes. So I still have hope in the universities in Taiwan, because I think over time, okay, these so-called good professors who want the environment to change would then be more willing to talk about this and maybe to collaborate with each other to achieve this goal. Okay, and so I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Daxuan, shall we hold our question till the end?
Yes, let's have another.
Atsushi, you want me to share my slides, right?
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course.
Well, as you know, many of our Asian countries and regions are now facing a very drastic aging population. And, Japan is a sort of a forerunner of an aging population in many aspects. So in order to cope with this aging population, I, as a labor economist by training, believe that we need to establish a lifelong active society in which the will and ability of older people can be fully realized or utilized regardless of their ages. So today, I would like to talk about it, and then I also talk about the role of universities to promote it. Would you please share the first figure?
The first slide?
Yes, first, right?
Okay, let's see. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, sure. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And as you can see in this figure, that Japan's population aging is globally unprecedented, both in its level and its speed. As for the level, the proportion of older people aged 65 and over is now about 29%, making it already the highest proportion in the world. And this proportion is going to be more than 1/3 of the total population in Japan before 2040. As for the speed, as you can see the steepness of the line graph in the figure, Japan's aging is much faster than that of European countries, Germany, France. In the matter of fact, Japan's aging has progressed more than 2 to 4 times faster than that of Europe. Also, Japan's aging population has a sort of depth. By depth, I mean that within the older population itself, the proportion of very old people aged 75 and over is increasing particularly rapidly. Please look at figure 1 on the box. The ratio of people aged 75 and over to people aged 65 to 74 was about 1:1 in 2015. But it is projected to be about 2:3 in 2025, when all of Japanese baby boomers will be aged 75 and over. And as you can imagine, the most significant result of this aging is a decline in number of workforce. So would you please share the next slide, please? Yes, thank you very much. And please look at the case A in this slide. You can see that the size of labor force will decrease from about 69 million today to about 60 million in 2040 if labor force participation rate would remain. And with such a drastic decline in labor force by 9 million, the domestic production may decrease unless there is a substantial improvement in productivity per worker to make up for the decline in workforce. It also leads to lower total earnings from work and therefore decreasing consumption unless there is a substantial increase in earnings per worker to make up for the decline in number of wage earners. So, the aging population may have a serious negative impact on the macroeconomy. And it will also reduce the sustainability of social security system in Japan. So under these circumstances, one of the most important solutions is to promote the employment of older people, which is increasing. In other words, we need to establish a lifelong active society in which the will and the ability of older people can be fully utilized. This is a point I would like to emphasize at first today. In the matter of fact, if the labor force participation rates of older people as well as women would increase, it is projected that we will be able to maintain labor force as much as about 68 million in 2040, as you can see in the case B of this slide. And if we can maintain this kind of level size of the workforce, in this case, probably we will be able to maintain both domestic production and consumption, as well as sustainability of the social security system by steadily increasing productivity and wages. Of course, you should not force people to work against their will. But in this respect, there is an advantage in Japan. That is the fact that Japanese older people still maintain a strong motivation to continue working. Please share the next slide, please. Yes, thank you very much. As you can see this figure, the labor force participation rates of older people are significantly higher in Japan as well as in Korea in comparison with European countries. In fact, the older labor force is now an indispensable part of the Japanese economy. Would you please share the next slide, please? Yes, thank you very much. And you can see the number of older labor force has been increasing in Japan during the past 2 decades. Nearly, the labor force aged 65 and over was slightly less than 5 million in 2000. But in 2023, it exceeded 9 million, nearly 10 million. This is, nearly 1 in 7 of the total labor force in Japan in 2023. So by taking advantage of this strong motivation among older people to continue working, we will be able to establish the lifelong active society. Okay. Okay, so Max, thank you very much for sharing the slides. Please stop sharing slide right now. Okay. So, in what way the universities can play in preparation for the lifelong active society? First of all, I think that promoting the lifelong education is one of the most important roles for universities to play. In the lifelong active society, you have a longer work life. Meanwhile, however, the skills necessary for work is changing at a greater pace due to the drastic technological changes today, and you also face endless changes of both domestic and international market situation. So during your longer work life, you must expect technologies and market structures to change repeatedly. The work skills you possess at the time of graduation will not necessarily be useful at the end of your work career. You will be facing a growing necessity of so-called recurrent education, especially when technology is becoming more advanced and the market more sophisticated. Much higher skills will be in strong demand. In this context, universities, and especially professional graduate schools, will be able to play a vital role. Also, I think all these changes to technologies and the market structures, as well as population aging occurring simultaneously, I think the ability to think for yourself, to understand new situations, and to take appropriate action based on this understanding will be in even greater demand. It is an ability of identifying the problem to be solved, explaining the cause of the problem, checking the validity of your explanation, and if your explanation or your understanding is correct, solving the problem based on your understanding. This is, as you can imagine, nonetheless the scientific way of thinking, namely finding unsolved research question, constructing a hypothesis that could explain the question, testing your hypothesis by using an adequate method to reach conclusion. And in this respect, universities need to provide students with more scientific liberal arts education. Another role that university can play in preparation for the lifelong active society is, of course, conducting research. And one of the most important research themes here is to know the conditions to promote the labor force participation of older people. Here, researchers in labor economics, our colleagues, play a crucial role in identifying the determinants of labor force participation of older people by using econometric methods. And these research have found that the biggest obstacle to prevent older people from continuing to work in their older age is their health conditions or their health problems. It becomes necessary to incorporate such research findings from labor economics with research findings from the fields of medicine and life sciences, which provide knowledge and insight on how to maintain and restore physical and cognitive capabilities of older people. You know, global aging is a long-term trend that will continue for decades to come. And it is also one of the most highly predictable long-term trends in all aspects of economic and social phenomena. Therefore, an aging is a long-term problem we can prepare in advance. But the problem is that society today is becoming more and more short-sighted, particularly in business communities and policy communities. In this, the role of universities is to look at issues with the long-term vision. And I believe that the lifelong active society is one of such important long-term visions for us to think about. Maybe I should stop my speech here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's excellent insights. And I want to encourage our audience that if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A button on Zoom to post your question there, and we'll leave ample time for Q&A session. And for now, Dashun, do you have any question to start with the moderate session?
No, I think you can begin, and let's do it.
Okay, so well, let me start with Ed. You started by painting a rather dire picture of Taiwan's higher education as a result of low birth rate, lack of supportive policy environment, very complex situation. And many of our audience come from places where birth rate are not yet that low and situation is not that dire yet. Do you have any advice you would give to them in saying, how do you not get there? You want to unmute yourself first?
Unmute.
Okay, yeah. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think, first of all, one lesson that other nations can learn from Taiwan is that you don't want to have too many universities. Okay. In the 1990s, Taiwan increased the number of universities substantially, okay, due to politics again, because at that time, Taiwan's economy was booming. And so many local politicians argued that their districts, every district they represent ought to have a university. Okay, so almost in Taiwan you see universities everywhere, and as a result of that, you had too many universities. Okay, competing for a very small pool of students. Okay, so one advice I can give you right now is that just make sure that you don't have too many universities, because after all, young people, they have different talents, right? Universities actually are not necessary for appropriate or good for all universities, all students with different talents, right? And some young people maybe will be better off learning skills, right? That would allow them to be good carpenters, mechanics and so forth, right? But right now in Taiwan, we have this problem because all young people, okay, high school graduates go to universities, and after they graduate from university, they consider themselves white collar professionals. Okay, so they are not willing to do so-called blue-collar work anymore, which could produce another problem in Taiwan. That is, we don't have people who actually can do this kind of traditional blue-collar work, which is very important for society. And actually, these are good-paying jobs. When too many university graduates looking for white-collar works, okay, the average salary they get actually is too low due to competition. Okay, so I think you don't want to have too many universities in the first place. Yes.
To follow up on that question, just deep dive it one level down. You said there are too many universities in Taiwan, and
Yes.
we have seen on the news that there are Taiwan universities closing down these years.
Yes.
Are we going to see more closing down of university? Is it just like the market supply demand balancing itself?
Actually, the government again, due to politics, right, is not going to force universities to close down in a very harsh way. But the government does have some criteria, okay, how in terms of when a university ought to be closed down. For example, if you have just too many intakes of students, too few intakes of students, then you ought to close down your universities, okay? I expect the number of universities to continue to decline, but as you said earlier, it's also a demand and a supply issue. Okay, since the supply dwindles with time, right? I mean, in terms of students, okay, and the university would then have to, the number of universities would have to decline too. But it's going to be a slow and painful process. Yeah.
Okay. Dashian, you got any question for Ed before I turn to Atsushi? You're muted, Dashian.
Atsushi, thank you
Yes.
very much for your clear discussion of the necessity of basically lifelong learning and lifelong working
Yeah.
issue in a modern society.
Yeah.
If one think about this carefully, one sees that this is just inevitable in all countries that's aspiring to be economically more and more prosperous. And so this is a generic problem of economics of a country. And therefore, to find a solution of simply educating older and older people into newer and newer profession seems to be a credible solution to the problem. But that itself could also run into trouble because your ability to absorb newer and newer ideas that is required in the education, that is required in the market in order for you to be competitive, will also be a challenge. So how do you see university teaching skills, intellectual skills as well as technical skills to older people when the ability to absorb new ideas become more challenging?
Thank you, Dashira, for an excellent question. And I also would like to add some comment to what Edo said. So let me put on this way.
Sure.
Well, as you can imagine, I think, aging population or declining population brings both bad news and good news for universities. And if I am allowed to talk about the bad news first, is that exactly what Edward said, a decline in numbers of kids, was therefore a declining numbers of students will make it harder for universities to manage their populations. And if tuition fees are raised to cope with this, problem, that create the burden of educational costs may lead to an even greater decline in the birth rate. So we can only, in this part, we can only hope for government to play indispensable role to solve the problem. This means, taking more adequate measures to address the declining birth rate and increasing public subsidies for education and scholarship. And then good news, as I have also said, thank you thank you, Dasha, for adequately, exactly, it took what I mean, is that, the role of universities will increase in a society with a, declining population. We must improve the quality of each and every person, by which I mean, we should make up for decrease in quantity of human capital with improved quality of human capital. So what is most important here is invest in human capital. In that sense, the role of universities will become increasingly important. And in any case, social progresses can only be achieved through human capital. So in that sense, the role of universities will become even greater. In other words, if universities cannot play this important role, then our society will decline. So the future of society depends on universities. Isn't this, the good news for universities? So the problem is, as you said, in what way we will be able to teach older people in coming new knowledge and technologies and so on. I think now both universities and people are gradually learning how to take sort of recurrent education. Many of older people already have a pretty good base of knowledge and education. And so I think it would be possible for universities to put new knowledge. For example, let me put it this way. If you are pretty good at finance or accounts, so you have a basic idea or theory of accounting or finance, but you do not have a new technology to deal with accounting software and so on. And then the universities will provide new knowledge or new techniques of using these accounting system to you. And that is one, I think, way of universities to provide older students with new knowledges and so on. Did I make myself clear to you?
Oh, very clear. May I follow up a little bit on what you have just said?
Yes.
I think we may have to look deeper into what a university is. For example, I think a large percentage of university administrators and faculty still think of university as what it was, say, 50 or 100 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
We still, and we still think of universities as teaching chemistry, physics, literature, history, economics. That's becoming not necessarily outdated, but insufficient. And so how do we, facing this immediate challenge of low birth rate how do we deal with that? For example, Max earlier mentioned that there are many areas, and maybe some of our participants today come from those areas where the problem that both Japan and Taiwan face is not there. What they face is probably the lack of higher education infrastructure.
Hmm.
And as we move into a global village, how do universities look at the global structure, the global infrastructure, as a means of moving on? Now, that, of course, politics are all local.
Hmm.
You're not going to convince a local politician who gets his votes from the local areas that you need to help countries that never vote for them. So here are the challenges, I think.
Right.
Perhaps we could think about this.
You know, I think I'm not challenging Edward, but I don't think we definitely need to reduce the number of colleges and universities. I mean, of course, you know, if some universities would not be able to attract a student, then these universities will be fade away anyway. However, you know, Edward mentioned about carpenters and production workers and so on. And but I would say, why not we have a very high qualified production worker with a college degree? Or, you know, why not we have a very sophisticated carpenter with a college degree? What I'm talking is there could be a variety of type of universities. You know, there should be a top research university, but also there will be some, you know, not community college type of educational institution in the States, but anyway, professional colleges that provide, you know, very sophisticated, you know, techniques or knowledge of production line or so on. So I think one solution or one way for us to go is to make you know to have a more variety of colleges and universities instead of just downsizing the total number of colleges and universities.
Ed, do you want to take the opportunity to give a quick response?
Yes, actually, I think Atsushi is right that you know, we ought to have universities of different mission, right, to educate different type of you know, workforce that we need in our society. In Taiwan, the problem was that as more and more students go to so-called universities, and we actually have also so-called technology universities, okay, whose mission originally should be what Atsushi advocated. That is, they ought to be, you know, just training students who with technical skills and good general knowledge and with some theory training and so forth, right? So they can become even better carpenters in the future. But what we have seen in Taiwan is that universities tend to converge in their educations, okay, meaning that they provide pretty much similar educational content and so forth. And fewer students want to learn this kind of skills, which they consider blue-collar skills. Mm-hmm. I think it also has something to do with Chinese culture, in which we say that everything is not as high class as being a well-educated person, right? So you want to get degree rather than skills, okay? And so I think that's a problem. But if I may add to what I just said a bit, I actually think universities are going to be less and less important in our world right now. Mainly because there are just so many venues for people to learn what they want to learn, right? Outside universities, like in the past 20 years, we have had many like open universities, right? Now, actually, any individual can open university in the sense that they can just use the tools, on the website, to share their knowledge with other people and so forth, right? We also see companies that actually train people outside their companies, right? Skills that they think is necessary for them to be hired by the companies. And I think the executives of IBM a few years ago actually said that they don't actually necessarily look at the diploma of their new recruits anymore. They look at the skill sets, and the portfolio of their human capital to decide, whether they want to hire a person or not. I think actually universities in the future are going to face tremendous challenges from these non-traditional educational channels. And because universities' governance is so inflexible, so rigid, okay, how universities are difficult to change, right? And when you become too big to change, okay, you're like dinosaur, okay, eventually I would see many universities becoming dinosaurs and become extinct. And there will be some universities that can exist, okay, but I think many universities will just be replaced by institutions or organizations, even individuals that we have not seen today. Yeah.
One of our founders, Eng Chai, is online, and he seems to have a question. Eng Chai, are you still there? Perhaps you can ask online and show your face and ask the question.
If he feels like doing so in appropriate attire, if he feels so.
No, okay, yeah, that's right. Eng Chai, are you there?
Are you able to unmute yourself, Eng Chai? I just try to unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, please. Can we see you?
Thanks.
Can we see you?
I'm not sure Max has programmed for me to be seen, but it's all right. I've been enjoying the conversation, and I just want to sort of make a comment, especially after what Edward has mentioned, that universities, if they, do not respond to changes, I think they become dinosaurs and they may become extinct. So I have actually asked a question, and this comes from a survey recently in the US on whether universities do have a positive influence on society. And actually the response, the response of yes, it seems to be very low in the States. It could be because of the Gaza protests, but if I were to ask the question to our panel members, say universities in Taiwan or universities in Japan, would they continue to be a positive influence to their respective countries? I thought Edward has sort of given some light in that direction for Taiwan, but I'd like to throw this question to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eng Chai.
Edward, you're unmute. Yeah.
Yeah. I think universities in Taiwan certainly will continue to play an important role in the future. But I do think that a few things must change in order for university in Taiwan to be able to do better. One is that the government needs to really allow the universities to be run independently, and which I mean that the government needs to stop using funding to constrain university to direct universities in terms of what universities can do. And I think so the government need to be much more confident in what universities can do in the future. On the other hand, I also would like to see the governance of university to be changed. That is, I think we need a new governance rather than the current governance system in which faculty members, the representation of faculty members and students are not is not adequate for the development of universities. Okay. In addition to that, I think the government has to understand that we just have to invest in universities more. Okay, if we do not allow tuition to increase, which the government has failed to do that. But this problem is universal almost across all nations right now, because you see, because the gap between the poor and the wealthy has expanded, right, in almost every country. So the priority of the government right now is not to invest in universities, rather to give help or subsidies to people who need help, right? So even in the United States, we see a lot more entitlement budget items, right? That is included in the annual budget of the United States government. So I think university has to be allowed to operate freely and independently so that they can find a way to survive. And there are many faculty members in Taiwan who actually are really good, right? They want to be good teachers, they want to be good researchers, they want to contribute to the society, but however, they are constrained, and they are not able to do what their talent and their ability, allow them to do, which I think is a sad thing. I think the government, I think regulatory environment in Taiwan needs to be changed, and if can be changed, then I think it will be a good thing. However, I still would like to say that universities will face tremendous competition from non-traditional organizations. Okay, and we see people willing to pay high tuitions to take say 20-hour classes, right? But they are not willing to pay tuition to go to universities. You see, so this kind of reveal preference tells us that what we offer universities is not as valuable as what's offered outside universities, and I think that's something that we really have to think about. But I do would like to emphasize once more that is, university needs to be agile now, okay, to be flexible, to move around, and which in Taiwan the universities are not allowed to do that, and that is the problem we have right now.
Dasha, can I just add?
Sure, please.
Most of East Asian countries, including Japan, Taiwan, Korea, I'm not quite sure the case of mainland China, but anyway, the human capital is the only resource that would drive economy in these countries, okay? So with the declining population, as I said, the human capital investment per person would be indispensable for these, countries which purely depend on human capital. So I think there is no question that we will need more human capital investment under the, aging population. The problem is where university will play important role to do that. Otherwise, as Edward mentioned a little bit, other system, I'm not quite sure, private corporation or some new organization will take that task. But I think maybe I am too optimistic with the university, but I think university is one of the most prominent candidate for us to rely on that kind of task, and that is what I would like to emphasize on the role of universities in aging society. Thank you.
One of our audience, Professor Mariana from Brazil, commented that they are facing similar situation as well. So I just want to add to Atsushi that that's for East Asia for sure, but also that goes much more beyond just East Asia. And one question I have to ask both of you is the word you were using earlier, productivity. As we have less labor force in society, everyone needs to be more productive, producing more.
Right.
What's the role, other than university, for training? How do you think AI and automation, could that be a solve for this? We know Japan is the leader in robotics. Taiwan makes all the chips for the world. What do you see? Like, will technology come and help us and save us from the collapse of demographics?
Of course, technology is very important, and machines and information technologies and so on is indispensable for you to improve your productivity. But the point is, it is human or human capital who utilize these, technologies. So, without having a human capital who can deal with or who can, develop these technologies, you will not be able to increase productivity through, through these things. Also, let me add one thing. The important productivity is not just the tangible productivity. The important thing is value-added productivity, okay? So, again, it is only human capital who can create, new value or new value added. Of course, to some extent, you can ask help of AI to do that, but eventually, it is a human capital that will create a new value added. So anyway, I think, again, I would like to emphasize the human capital investment is essential to improve the productivity.
Ed, do you have anything to add to this one?
Okay. I think Atsushi is right that AI will increase productivity. As to how much productivity gain we are going to have as a result of AI is still being widely debated among economists. In the past 2 or 3 decades, we have seen that in the advanced countries that productivity gain has been decreasing. Although we have witnessed tremendous improvement in technology in the past 2 or 3 decades. In the past 10 years, actually, even in the emerging economies, the productivity gain has seemed to have actually slowed down quite a bit. Okay, I think because productivity actually has a lot to do with what we call total productivity. A lot to do with the social infrastructure. If a social infrastructure is conducive to increased productivity due to new technology, then the new technology itself will not be very useful, right? For example, say we don't have a stable society, okay? Let's just say we have a chaotic society, right? The society is not very orderly functioning. And so even if you have new technology, the benefit of technology, okay, would not be very much due to the fact that the society is not able to use the technology, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I have seen in the past is that, and according to many researchers too, technology advancement in the past has created a big problem. That is, instead of seeing technology helping reducing the gap between the wealthy and the poor, we have seen actually the wealthy and the poor gap has actually deteriorated as a result of improvement in technology. It's mainly because the gain in technology go primarily to capitalists, right? People who provide capital, to people who know how to use the technology, how to benefit themselves, and to talents, right? Who possess special technology capabilities. Okay. And because of this phenomenon, it seems that universities in the past several decades have failed to educate students to be able to take advantage new technologies to improve their own economic welfare, and which is quite alarming. Which means that the universities globally are not doing what they should have. Okay, and because you see all the gains of technology goes to very few people, right? So you have seen fewer and fewer people owns a much larger percentage of the total wealth of their countries or in the world. Okay? And so I think that there are so many things the universities have to do. Okay, as I said earlier, the governance of university, at least in Taiwan, does seem to be able to allow university to move in the direction that they ought to. Okay, because it just the whole system just too rigid. Okay, and to be able to improve very much. Yeah.
Right. I like to ask a question. The world is changing so fast, and also technology is changing so fast. For example, the internet basically has changed our way of life. Just like our meeting today. If there's no internet, it would not have taken place. And the universities seem to have very little impact by these changes. I'll give you one example. The physics taught at a university in Taiwan or Japan is still the physics taught a university in France or China. And yet, if we use the internet, we can significantly reduce the number of people teaching physics to the world. Isn't it interesting that the impact seems to have penetrated very little into the function of universities of today? And maybe that's where we should think about. Another question. We know that in the world of the 21st century, the fastest growing continent is Africa. Africa will have 1 billion people within foreseeable future. Their young people will require tremendous amount of higher education or training, higher education, intellectual enhancement. And universities seems to play little role in that. Now, these are big questions. Perhaps it is beyond the scale of universities. But to me, it seems to be that's what universities need to think about for the 21st century. for the remaining part of the 21st century and maybe even moving into the 22nd century?
Well, Tashua,
Yes,
I
please.
think two of the questions you raised are very important. And I agree that some technologies, I mean, internet and so on, will reduce the necessary number of professors in universities. That is correct. And particularly in the case of the, teaching in a big classroom, I mean, teaching, for example, basic physics in a big classroom, I think, you don't need professors in every colleges or universities and so on. However, on the other hand, as I said, if we will need more sophisticated education, higher education, we also need to have more, what do you say, tutoring or, a small class education in which you can cultivate your ability to think for yourself, right? I mean, more research-oriented class or more, discussion oriented class. And then you need professors and lecturers to teach these small classroom students. So I think on one hand, probably you can save teachers for the big classroom education. But on the other hand, maybe you will need more teachers in a small classroom education. And also, you mentioned about the areas where we can see a growing young population, like Africa. I would say already many European or English-spoken universities are trying to attract the students from these areas. And I'm not quite sure to what extent Asian universities will be able to attract students from Africa, but I think we need to, seriously think about that. But one point I would add is, I'm not quite sure in the case of Africa, but we still have many Asian countries whose younger population is still growing. So we will need to attract the students from this area. But also, I don't like to be too optimistic, but not too pessimistic, but also, I mean, these East Asian countries whose population is still young and the population is still growing will be aging sooner or later.
That's right.
Right? So I think in that sense, our experience, experience of Japan, Taiwan, Korea, will be important for these, latecomer countries as an aging society.
We have an audience question. Harvest from, I believe, Singapore Social Science University. Harvest, do you have a question you want to ask our audience? Our speakers, I've unmuted you.
Hi, hello, Max, professors, as we, Professor Edward and Professor Feng. Okay, I don't have a specific questions, but I'm very very locked up in this conversation of this topic. It's very interesting, and I heard about the Dr. Edward did mention something about some universities have been closed maybe in Taiwan. And well, I'm from Malaysia. There's some private universities here too closed. I mean, especially after the COVID. Yeah, and about the aging society, and well, according to WHO, the what do you call that? The in 2050, they predicted, like 80% of older people will be living in low and middle income countries. Yeah, this is something that is going to be an issue, especially in the ASEAN or Asian countries. And of course, here, like in 2020, according to the report of WHO, the number of people aged 60 years and older outnumbered children younger than 5 years. So here, probably we have to look at something like, well, like in Malaysia, we are starting to introduce, for a multitasking society. This is to overcome a shortage of, competent society in the future. Also to build up more.
May I what is your question, please?
My question is, would it be actually, I don't have, but since you're asking whether it's my question is, I have this in mind, like, if we have a society that's already been working for so many years, since university is relevant, a place where they can go and get their education and their skills, maybe, the organization can send these professional people to go back into the university and learn something there and be more productive.
Thank you for your question. Actually, that is relevant to, thank you for your question. That is relevant to an earlier question another participant asked, audience asked, since there are so many universities, are we able to take some underutilized university and convert them into lifelong learning institutions? Have you thought of that or come across that discussion in your respective regions and countries?
Yes, I think in Taiwan, we are already doing that. Right now, we have many programs that are offered to students who actually come to school to study part-time right now. They are actually, they have their job. They just come back to school in the evening or weekend to study. We have many programs like that. And also in Taiwan, we, in the past, I think 20 or 30 years, we have had established many so-called society universities, which means that these universities are not part of these regular universities, but they use university facilities to offer courses to people who need to learn. Okay, and these courses can vary in terms of content a lot. For example, they can come to learn, cooking, to learn dancing and so forth. Okay, and of course they can also learn new skills like computing skills, computer skills and so forth. So we are already doing that. And then some universities, some private universities that are facing the pressure to close down are already considering to convert their facility to be like nursing home for the elderly and so forth. Okay, and this we do see trends like this. But however, I think what worries me most is whether universities, as they are today, can perform, their mission very well. I mean, university's mission is to advance in the research and to educate a student to be the leader in the future, right? And are we really doing that? That's what worries me. Yeah.
Let me add one thing.
Go ahead.
I think one important thing for university or college to do to cope with changing circumstances, sort of scrap and build of a department or so on. For example, in Japan, because of aging population, we are growing demand of nurses, or long-term care professionals. So some small college sort of close its department of literature and start, the department of nursing science or training long-term care specialists. Of course, you need to reshuffle the faculty as well. But anyway, I think we need to sort of restruct or make a restructuring of our structure of colleges or universities.
I see that our time is quickly running to the end. I think to conclude, I want to ask each of you 2 quick questions for you to think about. What advice would you give to university administrators who are thinking about the sustainability of their universities facing those issues? What advice would you give to students who is sort of entering this era where there's low birth rate, aging society, deciding what to study for their future? What advice would you give to them?
Well, if I say first, I would say the same advice to university administrator and the student. It's a student first. For university administrator, you think about your student first, not your profit or not your faculty's employment security and so on. Student first. And for student, you should look at universities or colleges, which university is more student-oriented administration. So, for university administrators, please look at the student first. And to student, please look at which university look at you.
Thank you. Ed?
Okay, I would like to say to students first. I think the most important thing for students to know is that they have to learn on their own. Okay, they cannot rely on the universities to learn, and they have to be able to learn on their own.
Yes, that's right.
So it's the ability that they must acquire. Okay, as early as possible. And because the world changes so fast, okay, and I must say that the universities right now, in Taiwan at least, are not actually providing adequate education to our kids. Okay, I'm critical about this, but I think it's something that we really have to think about. To university leaders, I think the most important thing is for them to cultivate the talents of their faculty members, okay, for them to form a formidable group for the change, for the better. And I think what the leaders of the universities should do. I think university leaders ought to very pay a lot of attention to this. But this is a very difficult task because, as I said earlier, universities are financially constrained, heavily regulated, so forth. But I must say, from my own experience, that the university presidents I have known, they have all tried very hard to change the environment, to make the universities better, but they need help. Okay, they need help from the faculty members, parents of the students, and to tell the government that the government has to change. Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Ashley, you want to conclude the session?
First of all, I think I want to thank both of them and all the people who participated in today's discussion for a very revealing discussion about higher education, not just in Asia or East Asia, but around the world, which seems to all be facing similar or will soon face similar problems and challenges. So therefore, one should not wait until the problem is here before you look for solutions. It is better to anticipate solutions even before it started. For example, when I went to Taiwan in 2008, I already heard that at that time people were telling me that even 20 years ago, the birth rate problem could easily be extrapolated, the problem in Taiwan. And yet, I don't see the Ministry of Education or universities faculty or universities administrator talk about this problem. They just assume that, well, when the problem gets here, we'll find something. But apparently not preparing for the problem, which they knew was coming, is a problem. So therefore, perhaps we could anticipate what new problems there will be in another 20 years, just by looking at the way that Atsushi today showed these extrapolation of data, what new problems there could be arising, and start planning the solutions now and not wait until 20 years when the problem got here, and then you're basically putting your hands up and say, I don't know what to do because the problem is here already and it's so intractable, I don't know what to do. So perhaps that's a lesson that we could learn from using data's extrapolation to look for solution in problems and solutions in the future. And I hope today's discussion from these two experts basically tell us that's what we need to do.
Excellent conclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edward, Atsushi. Thank you so much for participating in the discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.